do.
But I believe the Forester Church was, I get the application process was quite a few years also, because they had to go through the process.
Correct, it was about 5
Okay?
years for Forster
I believe the
Church.
mosque also has to go through the process, and so did the Coptic Church. It just got approval not too long ago. So why wasn't it then started to put this together so that all houses of worship are included instead of excluded? Because I feel, from what I read, that all other houses of worship are excluded.
It's
I'm
it's
sorry,
not,
that's
but
the way that I read it.
that may be your interpretation, but that's not the case.
Okay.
Name and address for the record.
Good evening. Susan Silverman, 6 Sky Place. I have a question regarding the proposed residential houses of worship. Does that impact the tax status of those structures? Will they become partially tax exempt, totally tax exempt? And if that is just the consequence, what does that mean for the village? I think we have about maybe 3,000 residences in the village, dwelling units. I mean, has that been impacted at all or discussed at all?
Well, we can't come up with zoning that is somehow going to limit the amount of tax exemptions that the village would possibly have to deal with. That
Okay.
is statutory. So
Okay.
theoretically, or not theoretically, if someone comes in with a house of worship and they comply with the statutory requirements for a partial exemption, they will be entitled to that. And that goes through Ramapo, but it's based upon statutory provisions.
So that's acknowledged, and the village will just have to deal with that.
Correct, just like as every other village has to.
Thank you.
Sure, Mr. Levine, name and address for the record, please. And again, we're still sitting with the agenda, right? Staying with the agenda. Absolutely. Yeah, I noticed that.
Mark Levine, 14 Lancaster Lane. Speaking as a resident. The foil, look, I think that should be taken out off your agenda because of what Jerry had said, the way it's written. I'm sorry, the way it's written, it specifically says that you have to get in contact with the person who drew the plans.
I will be making a motion to revise the FOIL.
I understand that, but even so, okay, it seems that this is being drafted from a 1993 document, and that document specifically states from that a plan with raised seal from an architect is foilable and can be copied.
Right, I understand.
That, and the only
gonna be permitted.
the only ones that are questionable have to meet 3 copyright standards.
Correct.
And those are the only ones
Understood.
that are questionable.
Right. We can move this FOIL without that page on.
So,
Thank you.
without this page,
Please,
you
That-
put,
That's the page that says that this is causing all the problem. To the extent that you seek to have reproduction made of documents that have been stamped and/or sealed by a design professional, you must obtain the written consent of that individual prior to any reproduction being made by the village. When I move when I request a motion to move this policy, I am going to ask that it be amended to remove that particular paragraph.
okay, so the residents will just have to sign a document.
That's something that we will work out.
And
No way.
the village will provide copies
Correct.
when available.
Correct.
Thank you. That's one item.
Okay.
Sticking to the agenda. There's a resolution to approve payment of $1,799.11, tax settlement. My question on that is that those properties were tax exempt for many years. I disagreed with the rationale behind that. And my question to you is now, Maserati now occupies one of those sites, and the ownership has changed. Are we receiving tax money now? Because I believe the ownership of these properties has changed.
We'll follow that up with the tax collector.
And at the next meeting, can we?
Sure.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Jane, I didn't realize, okay, Lisa, if you can answer, that's fine.
This is a result of a court action that was filed on behalf of Mr. Gase and his Why Not LLCs that he used to own the property there. They are not from current time, they're from previous years when he was the owner. They were the pieces that were actually paying full taxes, not requiring the agricultural exemption that a number of those properties in that corner did. So this is just for one property. He had a whole list, all of them. The only one property, which was the home area, received a reduction over 2 years. The rest of them were denied any reduction. So that's what this is for 2 years from 2012 and 2011.
So Maserati's paying their full tax.
Exactly, and once the money transferred to the new owner, they are now going to be paying the full taxable rate on that property for the time being, unless they file another application for an exemption of whatever they might be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. Save your month.
Huh?
Save your month.
Absolutely. And we made some money.
There you go.
Okay. I have a few words to say about One Carroll. You want me to say?
Please save that for later. This is only on the agenda.
Sure. Thank you. I thank you.
Thank you. Oh, we got a mulligan? What happened?
Mulligan. I don't play golf. I play short.
Neither do I.
Hillary Kogan 20.0. I actually wanted to ask a question about that FOIL law
Sure.
resolution, since we have adjusted it so much, or so it seems. Are we going to have an opportunity to see it as it's adjusted to make sure that it's comfortable to all of us when you redraft it or amend it, or?
This is not a law.
No,
This is the procedure.
It's a proposed.
No, this is a procedure.
All right.
So what the procedure that we have here is the procedure that we've basically been following.
Right.
My understanding since the village has been established.
Except for all these recommended changes, which we are now.
No, the only recommended change was that one about the
Right.
approval,
Okay.
which I am gonna be moving to excise.
Okay.
The rest of the document that was attached
Is as is.
is as
Nothing
is,
changes.
and
Where's all
there
the
should be no
time while
issue.
you're not changing?
Thank you. Okay, very well.
That's good government. Nice and efficient. It's streamlines to the baker.
Well, right. I would prefer, if people haven't spoken yet, Mr. Lieberson, if you want to come back, you'll have an opportunity.
Steve Miller, 12 Balmoral.
Good evening, Mr. Miller.
I just want to make sure that the parade law that we're talking about addresses all types of parades. Last summer I was blocked off from my street. There was a run. I don't know what it was for, who was by. I didn't get notice a week before or a day before, even in my mailbox. And I don't know if it's planned again. There were police officers, but I couldn't get onto my street.
What street?
Oh, they ran down
What
during
street?
Where do you live?
Balmoral.
Belmore.
We just didn't hear you. I didn't say anything.
Yeah, Mr. Miller, it applies to any event that theoretically is gonna be on village roadways, that's gonna somehow affect village homes, streets, and things of that nature. So whether it's a run, whether it's a parade, whether it's a block party, it's any event.
Thank you.
Anyone else on the agenda? Sure. Yankees, go Yankees.
Parades, are they responsible
Do
for
you oversee the
liability
planning
insurance?
board of any?
I think that was in
My name is Dominic
the
Russo,
items. I have to
I'm
look.
9 Newacton
It's in the agenda. Hold on.
Does the town have any rulings on respect to our dwelling size the drafting of any architecture's physical dimensions, do you oversee the planning board?
The village establishes the zoning regulations that deal with building footprints, with setbacks, with things of that nature. Then what happens is, when you're an applicant, depending on what you're applying for, you either go before the planning board or the zoning board to make sure that you comply with those laws.
Do you ever make judgments with regard to the planning board with the size and dimensions of properties?
There's a bunch of pages.
that
You're gonna have to
come into our jurisdiction, in your jurisdiction also, that are unfit for the area, believe it, regularly unfit?
Well,
This is Spring Hill, in respect to Spring Hill.
Well, that-
There should be judgments by your people on the board, in addition to the planning board, to make these final decisions before these zonings are changed.
Well-
Not even though the zonings are not changed, the structures are changing, the visual, peacefulness of a piece of property, or the surrounding pieces of property, or the parcels of property surrounding it. A normal home now becomes a religious organization.
All right, Mr.
And I
DiRoberto.
have no disrespect for any of the religious organizations, ethnic or whatever. It doesn't make no difference to me, but our communities are being subject to these structures that are not suitable
Mr.
for
DiRoberto,
the community.
we're going a little bit far afield now with the agenda items.
Okay, but this is the agenda that a lot of these people here are here for. It's gone beyond that. The point is, what can you do to oversee the planning board before these structures are put up?
The planning
Tell me I'm wrong.
board, the planning
Does
board,
anybody feel that way that I feel?
the planning,
Thank you.
next name and address for the, name and address for the record. Next one, anybody else?
Can you address his question?
Sure, I will address the question. The zoning board and the planning board are independent boards. The village board does not in any way try to tell the respective boards what to do and how to do it. They are by law supposed to be independent. They are by law able to assess and determine what, if any activity can occur on the property. If it complies with village law, then they would approve it. If they need a variance, they would have to prove the fact that they need a variance. Now, if your question is, who determines whether the footprint of the building should be shrunken, then yes, it is the village board that makes that decision.
You made a statement, and your opening statement was rationale. What determines rationale in the judgment of a structure? And
I don't know if I
why
quite
should it
understand
not-
your
Why
question,
should it
but
not be visually looked at by the planning board and by?
the state law provides the guidelines as to what applications go before a planning board, what applications go before a zoning board. As a matter of practice, as a practical matter, if Mrs. Brock wanted to renovate her garage, okay, she should not have to go before the planning board and go through the expense and the time to do that. She would apply for a permit. However, if Mrs. Brock is going to do such construction to her home that will affect a certain percentage that triggers a review by the architectural review board, she will go before that board. If Mrs. Brock does something that is possibly going to extend her recreation room, where it's possibly going to run afoul of setbacks, she is going to have to go to the zoning board to get a variance. Will she have to go before the planning board? Probably not, because that's not something that would normally go to. So there are, if this, then that, if this, then that. And it's done by statutory law, and then the village fills in the gaps.
One more point. The planning board. It's hard to hear you. And the permits that are issued.
Can everyone hear him?
Misinterpreted.
Yes.
Are misinterpreted. They're not giving the true application by the owner of the property.
Oh, I'm
on
sorry.
what the
You know,
bottom line is
Mr.
gonna be.
DiRoberto, I'm sorry. It's not, the planning board does site plan. You're talking about the zoning board, and you're talking about variances now. Or perhaps you're talking about the building department, okay? Now.
Yes.
I'll tell you what, the interpretation of what these structures are being made for is completely
Okay,
correct.
and, all right, and that's, okay, very
We've
well.
got to do something
Thank you.
about that.
Thank you, Mr. DiRoberto. Okay, name and address for the record, please.
Abram Good, 17 Mount.
Good evening, sir.
Can I have your address again?
17 Lamont.
17 Lamont.
My understanding that zonings are based on the community. The zonings in the village of Chestnut Ridge are not the same zoning as in the city of New York.
It's right near
Unfortunately,
Children's Park.
in the village of Chestnut Ridge, there are about 3,000 residents, roughly. As of today, between 37 and 40% of the residents have changed, and it's changing. Most of this 37% or 40% of the residents don't drive in Sabbath, and they have to walk. I was walking down on Appledale, and I was harassed by a fellow that I don't want to name him, in front of my kids, that you're turning into New Square, you're turning into Muncie. I grew up here, I'm not going to let her go. So my point is very simple. It's not against the law to have 12 kids, but it's against the law to say for a person, because you have 12 kids, you're not welcome in this neighborhood. I'm walking on the street with my kids, and I'm being harassed every weekend. And that person who lives on that street is not arresting me. He brought someone outside that doesn't live in Dexter Park, and he harassed me, and he told me blank point, at Sabbath I couldn't record him, and I don't have the resources to make a federal lawsuit. I will make sure I have the resource and the energy not to turn in the village of Chestnut Ridge to New Square, Muncie. One of the main reasons democracy is if people have disagreements, like Democrats and Republicans, you come down and sit. And one of the main things to prove it, there was fights going on in Orange County for years, and after years, people sat down and came to understanding. It's time for the two sides to come to understanding and sit down. Everybody has to give an inch, but to harass people just because they're a different ethnic group or they have a different religion is against the law.
You're absolutely correct. Thank you, sir. I'm sorry for Yes, agenda item. You have something else, Mr. Levinson? Name and address.
Ben McCullum, 726 South Pascack Road. I'm reading the permit on the documentation that I have here. As a part of this and listening to some of the comments, in filing for a permit, does anybody have to produce a bond or some,
Excuse me, where are you reading from with the permit?
for the parades? I'm sorry.
Wait, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. I wasn't clear. So when they're issued a permit, does somebody have to produce a bond or some level of insurance to cover any damage that's done by a parade or?
Usually, depending on what they're doing, usually for a parade, for instance, I don't believe we had the fire department post the bond, but I think it would probably have to depend on the type of function, and that's something that we would have to assess. That's something we could revisit.
And my recommendation is that this be considered because, I mean, when we're talking about a lot of people on the street, there could be accidents, there could be property damage, you know, whoever's organizing the parade. Okay?
We usually do require insurance coverage, like if you're going to be using the village facilities or something like that, so that's very easy to dovetail. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Levinson. Yes, Mr. Levinson.
Jerry Leibelson, 31 Midway Road. I just want to get clarification on the foil change. You said you're going to not include that paragraph, but you're still going to require me to sign something that will so that you're not liable?
What I am going to do is we are going to establish the FOIL procedure as is currently before this board sans that paragraph. And then I am going to be speaking with the village attorney to see what needs to be done, if anything further needs to be done to protect the village with regard to any potential copyright infringement.
Right now,
So-
that is not required.
Right now, that's not required, and you're going to be able to take all the photos that you want to
But
take.
can I still be sued?
I am not going to give you any legal advice, Mr. Lee.
Good idea.
Copyright.
Anyone else? Nothing else on the agenda? Okay.
I move we close the public hearing on the agenda.
I'll second.
Thank you, trustee Valentine, all in favor? Aye, opposed, there being none, thank you very much. Okay, so what we're gonna do is, we are going to, hold over the, public law, we're gonna continue the public hearing, excuse me, on the, on proposed law with regard to parades, processions, and special events. We're gonna speak with the village attorney, just so that we have a date. What we will do is we will adjourn it to the next meeting date. However, if we still haven't revised it, we may carry it another meeting date. So that's going to be, again, it's kind of off our third Thursday schedule. I think it's March 22nd. So it would be, we're gonna adjourn it to March 22nd. But again, if we're still tweaking it, we may adjourn it to the next. So I just need a motion to carry to the second, 22nd. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Brock, thank you, Trustee Valentine, all those in favor? Aye, opposed, there being none, thank you very much.
Let me just do it illegal anyway. We just
We're
do it
good.
illegal.
That all
The
gets
fines are
held
probably
over.
less than
We're
the
gonna-
bond would be.
We're going to also adjourn that to the
But it might
22nd.
kind of align things a little bit. It may not. Never needed a parade law in this village.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor Brock, thank you, Trustee Valentine, all those in favor? Aye, opposed, there being none, thank you very much. At this juncture, I'll entertain a motion, actually with the public hearing with regard to the real estate, so at this point, I will entertain a motion with regard to resolution 2018-11 to adopt the negative deck as it relates to the alternate veterans real estate tax increment.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move resolution 2018-11.
Thank you, Trustee Valentine, thank you, Trustee Miller, all those in favor? Aye, opposed, there being none, thank you very much. So I guess, let's see, now the next would be the public hearing on the proposed law to grant the real property tax for Cold War
That's once they go
veterans.
through the resolutions.
Again, there were no comments, so I'll entertain a motion to, again, just close the, with regard to that.
I have a charger in my car, but you'll never get to my car. I have a battery pack.
All right,
I'm recording and I'll record this to list as it's dead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Brock, for the motion. Do I hear a second? Trustee Valentine, that's on the Cold War exemptions. All those in favor? I oppose, there being none. Thank you very much. Please make sure Mr. Shedler gets word that we passed the resolution because he was worried. Okay, thank you. Next, I'll entertain Resolution 2018-13 to award the relocation bid for Santiago Moving for the 500 building.
So moved.
Thank you, Trustee Miller. Thank you, Trustee Brock, for the, Deputy Mayor Brock for the second. All those in favor? Aye, opposed, there being none. Thank you very much. Entertain Resolution 2018-14 with regard to the tax cert.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Trustee Valentine. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Brock. All those in favor? Aye, opposed, there being none. Thank you very much. Okay, with regard to Resolution 2018-15 and with regard to the village's spoil policy, I am going to move the policy, however, with the following revision, that we do delete the paragraph beginning with "to the extent that you seek" and ending with please see attached opinion from the Committee on Open Government.
I'll move 2018-15 as amended.
Thank you, thank you, Deputy Mayor Brock. Thank you, Trustee Valentine. All those in favor? Aye, opposed, there being none. Again, thank you very much. With regard to Resolution 2018-16, awarding a contract to Bullet Security for the installation of security cameras in Village Hall and its immediate contract. Thank you, Trustee Miller. Thank you, Trustee Valentine, for the second. All those in favor? Aye, opposed, there being none. Again, thank you very much. This juncture, we will entertain Resolution 2018-17 to refer the House of Worship, as we already explained to the folks what we're going to be doing. Thank you, Trustee Miller. Thank you, Trustee Valentine. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? There being none. Thank you very much. Next on the agenda, Resolution 2018-18, approving the abstract of 42 claims. So we can bear
Sure, I just accelerated a little bit. Resolved that the funds set forth on pages 1 to 3 on an abstract dated February 22nd, 2018, the aggregate amount of $147,790.42, as submitted by the village treasurer to be by
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Brock. Will hear a second? Thank you, Trustee Miller. All those in favor? Aye, opposed, there being none. Thank you very much. Okay, at this point, we will now open up the floor to public discussion on any items that you may have on your mind that we haven't already discussed. Name and address for the record, please.
Lee March Grayson, 52 Wilshire Drive. I have just a couple of questions. Good evening.
Sure.
My first question is, what is the status of Red Schoolhouse Road between DeSalvo and Summit?
You're talking about the corridor study?
Correct.
Yes, that is still, the planner is still compiling and putting together the summary of all of the comments that we obtained from our charrette. Max Stack, who is the planner shepherding that, advises me that he should be getting back to the village in the next couple weeks with the summary and taking the next step with regard to, again, the public, continuing the public hearing with regard to that corridor study.
Do you anticipate zone changes for that area?
Well, that does come with the corridor study. There may be proposals from the planner to implement some zone changes, and usually that is a result, but it's not a guarantee, but that's usually the result.
When will the report or proposals be available for the public?
Soon as we get it, it'll be available for the public.
Will that be available by the village website?
We will try to make it notice however we can so that people will be aware of it. So.
Okay. The other concern I want to address is whether or not there's been any discussion regarding a tree ordinance in the village to preserve trees in the village, to prevent the mass cutting down of trees, something that occurred in the area we were just talking about, which created a aesthetic blight. Will the village consider an ordinance that will require an owner to make an application for approval before the mass removal of trees so we can preserve the character of our neighborhood?
Mr. Grayson, that's kind of been an ongoing discussion with this board and even with the various with the planning board and the zoning board from their particular comments. The short answer is we haven't all agreed that we're going to move forward on a law, but it's something that we are still trying to assess and discuss, because as much as there are folks who feel that there should be some type of restriction with regard to the cutting down of trees, there are just as many on the other side that feel as though that this is my property, as long as I'm not negatively affecting my neighbors, that I would prefer that you not tell me what I could do with my trees.
Not aesthetically, it's not wildlife.
Correct.
Maybe affecting the neighborhood.
So, but that's an ongoing discussion.
Well, it creates a visual blight, it affects the environment, it changes the entire character of the community. Is there an anticipated timeline when this topic will be taken up and moved forward?
No.
I'm sorry?
No.
And this board does not agree within itself about whether or not, what the rules should be, or whether there should be any rules at all. And I'll let you know, if you are upset that your neighbor clear cut, I'm going to tell you to plant trees.
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
I'm going to tell you to plant trees and block it out. Because
Well,
I
that's
can't.
poor advice, most respectfully.
It's not poor advice.
And in fact, I went to...
Okay, all right,
I don't think
okay.
my property, if I don't like what's going on next door, I'm going to block it out.
Well, I have to respectfully disagree, and that's why there's something known as nuisance, in addition to environmental impact. And I can assure you that I was quite vocal, as were some of my neighbors. And I think there are a lot of people who, while on the one hand can understand and recognize that people have a right to do what they want with their property, we also know from just the discussions prior to opening up that there are actually laws that curtail what people can do with their property, such as zoning ordinances and the like. And I can tell you there are a lot of people who are upset with some properties. And last summer, that were removing scores and scores of trees, not an exaggeration. And then it continued even after the Zoning Board of Appeals reached a resolution and placed limits, and still the owner continued to remove lots of trees. So I am hoping that the board can get together and do something about this while we have trees left in Chestnut Ridge. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, please, name address.
Wait, ladies first. It's not even a mulligan, what is it for 3 times?
This is a different, this is
It's a different thing.
another item.
So, Hilda Koga, 25 Mill Court,
New
a couple of
business.
things. Number one, I wanted to ask about 750 Chestnut Ridge Road, the property that came before the zoning board in August regarding fire code violations and stuff like that has not been back before the zoning board, and it's now 6-7 months. And I brought this up at every meeting since then. It seems ridiculous that it hasn't been addressed at this point.
Well, I don't know what the current state of affairs are. I'll have to find out.
I know, and then
That's fine.
unfortunately, Mr. Sebastian's not here, so I thought I'd bring it to your attention. The other thing is, I wanted to ask about whether the village is considering giving out more of those yellow sashes. It's getting warm out, there's a lot of people walking to shul on Friday night, and we want to be able to see them as they walk.
We have plenty of them at Village Hall. Our supply is still there.
I'm encouraging anybody to pick them up, please. And last, but this is kind of a public thing, but I guess I have a right to respond to that gentleman and just explain to you, sir, I don't know if you're still here, but we all sometimes feel discriminated against. I live on a street that's mixed, and I'm not a very religious person. And so I feel kind of an outcast on a street that I've lived on for 25 years. So I say to you that it happens to all of us. We should find a common ground, but we should be respectful of one another. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Coleman.
Ben McCullen, 726 South Pascack Road. An issue that I'd like to make you aware of. South Pascack Road, where it connects all the way down to North Avenue from Pascack Road, has become a major thoroughfare for school bus. Okay, so that being said, you've got a dangerous situation. You've got a lot more children in the area now that are playing. There are all kinds of things going on. The buses are going real fast. Not a little fast,